interactive, and then it moved to music, and then gaming, and everything else. So
crazy.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I just have some questions. Thank you again for doing this so much.
Yeah.
All right. I don't know how to start this. Kate usually always does all the starting, so I'll let her figure that out. I guess I'll just go ahead and start, and then do. And then, how do you want me to introduce you? I guess.
Any way you want.
Oh, okay.
Totally up to you.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess we'll. Kate, have you started all the recording stuff here? I know she's on mute.
Yes, I've started all the recording stuff, and the intro should be fairly, just say, you're doing an interview about Apollo 11, about how much you liked Apollo 11. Sorry. He's completely right. I handle all the intro stuff.
Okay.
Ooh,
all right, so.
Todd, are you still here?
I am.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Sorry. I've never used Skype. So it's confusing me, but yes, all of the recording stuff is already up and going. So
okay,
feel
cool.
free to start whenever.
Okay, all right. So I'll do a little intro, introduce you, and then we'll get started into the normal stuff.
Sounds
all right,
good.
All right. Here we go. Hello, today. Welcome to But Why the podcast, and today we are going to sit down with Apollo 11 director and producer Todd Douglas Miller. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So I did get this chance to see your film at South by Southwest, and it was by far the best film I saw all week.
Oh, thanks. That's high praise.
Yeah. So please bear with me. I'm recovering from South by, so it's a long time, but hopefully this should be a lot of fun. So I guess the first question I want to ask you, obviously, probably you get this all the time. What inspired you to make this film?
Well, we had started with a short film on Apollo 17 that we did for CNN Films tail end of 2016. And the question was raised in the team at the tail end of that project is, could we do the same thing with the materials from Apollo 11? Knowing there was a lot in existence at the time, we did have some footage that was never before seen with audio recording. Was sunk up for the first time. So we had probably about like 5 or 6 clips, and we ended up just kind of doing it as an editing exercise. I was working very closely with one of our archive producers, Stephen Slater, who's based in the UK. And Stephen had really made it his mission in life to sync up a lot of this stuff. The early Apollo missions had no audio on them with regards to mission control. So he was using a lot of the air-to-ground transmissions and the loops that were recorded in mission control to sync all of that stuff up. So we kind of started with that. And it was purely an editing exercise. We really didn't know if it would work to expand it into a 90-minute or 2-hour feature-length film. But as we started working with the materials, we found that we had more than enough to work with. And then CNN was actually interested in this. Gets into right around the early part of 2017. They said they wanted a moon landing video and for broadcast, and I was resistant at first. I thought, maybe it would be a little bit too arty for them. We definitely wanted it to be more of a direct cinema experience, even though we knew we were introducing sound design and score into it. But we really wanted audiences to feel like they were a fly on the wall for the ride. So that began, a long research project with NASA through their chief historian's office, and also the National Archives, which is the end repository for a lot of film that gets shot by the government, in this case, NASA.
Wow, that's a lot. So I guess how long did it, take to put all this together then?
Well, we first started, it was about the project from inception inception to completion was about 3 years, 3 years and some change. But we started with the idea to just collect and research everything that was available to us. So we had, every frame of film, even the TV broadcasts, whether they were network or, they broadcast via slow scan television from the command module and the lunar module. So we had all that. We had all the stills. They shot over 1,000 Hasselblad images during the course of the mission from space. And then certainly all the ground-based photography and cinematography. So that included the launch, recovery operations, and some of the pre-launch activities. So all of that stuff combined, we laid out into a timeline, which once we were done with it, basically stretched 9 days. The mission itself was 8 days and some change, but in effect, our timeline was 9 days. And then, of course, we had all the training footage as well, and some of the post-flight activities, which included a world tour that they went on for about a year, the astronauts. Then they visited some of the various facilities that had built the command module, lunar module, Saturn V. So we had some footage from that. But the scope of the project changed immensely once we were alerted to, via the National Archives and their motion picture division, the existence of this large format film collection. And then it became more about working with them to not only scan these images, but to preserve them and curate them properly, and ultimately help to archive them as well. And it just so happened that the company that we're based in Brooklyn, New York. The company that our post house that does a lot of our conform and color for our films was getting into the film scanning business. A lot of companies were getting out of it, and they had made the decision to develop some newer technologies to be able to scan this large format film, which before was a very costly endeavor. It was also not the safest thing in the world. These guys had our team had technology that enabled us not to actually touch any of the negative of the film. Wow. So we were able to use a wide variety of different flavors of large format, which ultimately we ended up doing on the project. So that was kind of one part of it. And then the second part was, as we progressed, right around the same time, we were alerted to a speech recognition project that was being done at the University of Texas, Dallas, for a large segment of audio from Mission Control that was uncatalogued at the time. So there was roughly about 18,000 hours of that was directly related to the Apollo project. 11,000 hours of that was Apollo 11. So then we got our hands on that right around in 2017, right before it left NASA's export control. So again, working with NASA and some of the other researchers to identify exactly what was on there, try to generate transcripts for it, and then incorporate it into the film.
That just is amazing. It sounds like a lot of work.
It definitely was a lot of work.
Within all these hours, was there any actual difficulty getting any of the footage, or do you guys have access to everything to be able to do all this?
Yeah. So initially we wanted to scan everything that was available to that was Apollo 11 related, and at the time that meant all the 16 and the 35 millimeter. We basically were just going to up the quality of it all, knowing that all of it had been seen before. I just wasn't happy with the quality of it. We knew at the time we were probably going to go for an IMAX release, so obviously quality was paramount. And some of the newer this scanning technology that Final Frame, our post house, had developed would allow us to, from a technical standpoint, be able to, get that higher quality. So but no one had really tried to quantify exactly how much was in there. One thing you realize when you start dipping into the archival system, in any archival system, it's scattered, and particularly with something like this, there was a lot of coverage. It's arguably the greatest achievement in humankind. So a lot of the materials were spread around the different NASA facilities and also within the National Archive network. So you would have some archivists that knew, a piece of this here, maybe a piece of that there. Stephen Slater, our archive producer, spent the summer of 2017 on a research trip working with their team to try to quantify everything that was available. And at that time, we did know about this discovery of the 65 millimeter material. So it was also trying to include that and try to quantify it, and then try to find the provenance of all of this stuff. Where was it shot? Who shot it? Who was responsible for it? What condition was all this stuff in? So we can, prepare what we call the master scanning list, and then start to prepare the transport of all these materials, from DC up to New York, so we could, our team could begin to work with it.
Wow. Just blown away by all the hard work you all did and how much time it took, because, obviously I've seen it and it's amazing. I guess doing all this footage, you've talked about there was 1,100 hours and everything. So what all did you, what was the process of taking all this footage and audio and everything and making it? What did you, just trying to say, how did you know what to put in for the 2-hour film? What was going into that 90 minutes? Was there anything that you left out?
Well, we certainly there was a lot that we left out, but we wanted to know, just having researched not only the footage itself and knowing what we had, but also just the stories. You talk to the astronauts, you talk to mission controllers. There's certain things that had been in books, articles, interviews with all of them that hadn't made it into either fiction or nonfiction films. So a lot of it was working backwards from a story standpoint. Things that I wanted to see. For instance, when they launch and they go into Earth orbit, they orbit the Earth a couple revolutions before they light the J2 engine to go to the moon. And when they do that, it's called the translunar injection maneuver, just a fancy way of saying they lit the candle on the engine. But it's a very big deal. And mostly in all the Apollo, for the majority of the Apollo missions, it was done on the dark side of the Earth. And Gene Cernan on Apollo 17 described it as TLIing right into sunrise. So all of them witnessed this amazing sunrise that had happened. Armstrong on the Neil Armstrong on the onboard audio says we're going, and it's in the film. He says we're crossing right over the Terminator, meaning the line of demarcation on the Earth from the dark into the light. And we had never seen that depicted before. So it was, again, going back into the archive, knowing that we had some audio to utilize for that scene, and then finding a shot. We actually found a couple of shots, not from Apollo 11, but from some other missions. We could show it to Mike Collins and to Buzz Aldrin and say, "Is this what it looked like? Is this what that TLI maneuver felt like?" Get their validation, and then ultimately keep it in the film. So a lot of what we wanted to show, narratively speaking, was kind of working backwards from these little moments that we were finding in the archive that hadn't been either seen or heard before.
Awesome. I guess kind of going off of that, was there anything outside of that you kind of want to highlight that people might not have been known about from Apollo 11?
Yeah, Neil Armstrong had. There's a scene in the film where we show a solar corona that happened on the way to the moon, and Neil Armstrong had talked about it in some interviews. The question was, "What was your most idyllic moment from the mission?" It wasn't putting the first footprint down on the moon. It wasn't, the launch or anything else. It was actually seeing this solar corona that happened on the way to the moon. Buzz Aldrin had talked about it. Michael Collins had talked about it as just this kind of once in a lifetime thing. You hear them going crazy on the onboard audio over it. Neil on the onboard says it's worth the price of the trip. So again, we hadn't seen it depicted, and we wanted to depict it. So again, we, in a screening, we actually showed the scene to Buzz. He said, "Wow, it kind of looked like that, but it was a little bit more. We were back a little bit more, so we can go back, work with it a little bit. Just get it right into the sweet spot, and then be able to accurately portray exactly what they saw." Other than that, there's a ton of stuff we just couldn't fit in, in just the course of the edit. There was, for instance, a 26-year-old Texas mathematician named Poppy Northcutt, who gets on comm at one point during the mission. She's working in the back room, and she basically schools this older flight controller in the front room with math on why his trajectories are off. And it's this great little moment. She ended up being very important in the front room on Apollo 13 and getting the guys back. So little moments like that'll end up, of course, on DVD, Blu-ray, and some extras. But there's just so much little things that we found that wouldn't necessarily make it in. We didn't either have footage to support it, or just didn't go into the flow of the way that the film was edited. But certainly there's a lot.
Awesome. I know one of my favorite moments, I don't think even when Kate and I were watching, she didn't realize that they didn't have much fuel left. And so just watching the countdown of between impact or landing and then fuel was great for me.
Yeah, that was definitely, that was actually, they called it the bingo command, basically. So that's, they would have had to abort if, the landing, they had just enough fuel to get back, into orbit. But I think if you were to ask Buzz or Neil if they were going to abort, they would have said no.
Speaking of which, so we had, what was it like? Because obviously, I guess the score, I love the score, and I guess working with Matt Morton and putting all the sound editing and everything together. What was that like? Because I know the sounding and editing and score is amazing.
Yeah, we talked early on. I mean, as much as it's such a pleasure to work with Matt. We've known each other since we were kids. We grew up together, and so we just have a shorthand. I'd never have to worry about what he's working on. The only difference between the way we normally work with what we worked with, or how we worked here, was we did a lot of predominantly pre-scoring. So typically we'll do a post-score. I'll edit a sequence with temp music, send it to him, and then he'll post-score it all in. With this, he wanted to do the entire score with period instrumentation. So there wasn't anything that he used on the score that was around later than 1969. And that included kind of the machine that did the weight of the score was a Moog synthesizer that he got. It was a 1968 Moog synthesizer that got reissued a few years ago. So he utilized that, and it was just amazing to get these hour-long compositions, and then we would end up, I could end up, just really using that stuff as the bedrock for the entire, tone of the film, the structure of certain scenes, and then all of us had worked together for so long. So Eric Milano, our sound designer, who initially we were going to hire a pretty big sound department, but we ended up just working on it so long. And Eric, he's such a skilled sound designer, Foley artist, re-record mixer, all the different things. I don't even know what they are, but he does it all. And me, him, and Matt have worked, all three of us together on so many projects. So And we knew that, we just wanted everything to be as accurate as possible. And then creatively, with Matt's music, we wanted it to be integrated into the film as much as possible. And then there was times, particularly in some of the space sequences, where we didn't have a whole lot to go on with the sound design, but we knew that the music could either simulate emotion or be, almost the design of what the rocket or the engine was doing, or the atmosphere. So we spent a long time just working on, getting all these different scenes right, particularly with some of the, anytime an engine would fire, which was always very important, or during the landing as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I think I did amazing. I know I keep repeating myself. Sorry. I enjoyed this film a lot.
Oh, thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
What are you hoping for the impact of this film would be?
Well, I think like everyone else, we kind of laugh amongst ourselves. It's the only time we get a reprieve is if we get to go to the screenings and sit there and watch the film. And usually, you're by the end of you make a project, you make a film, you've worked on it for years, and the last thing you want to do is watch it. But this one, we just watch it every single time, and I'm just constantly amazed at what to sit in a theater and just have this communal experience, something I really haven't had. As I remember going to, kind of big event films as a kid, and that's kind of what it feels like. And I'm not saying it because we made it, but I'm so proud of, the team, everybody that, just brought their A game to make it happen. But probably most importantly, just witnessing, what's up on the screen, that, there was just hundreds of thousands of people just spread across the country and the world that all came together to make this thing happen. And it's just an extraordinary accomplishment. And I hope that people, take away a very positive message that, when we all come together, we can accomplish something great like this.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel like that's what I got from watching it, for sure. I guess I have about one more question. It's kind of one of those kind of unique to us, but outside of, I guess, Apollo 11, what is your favorite thing in pop culture?
My favorite thing in pop culture. Well, as you can see, I'm not too good on social media, so and I've been stuck in a time machine in 1969 for the last 3 years. I gotta say, I'm in music. I just love music. So, and I'm just fascinated by the diversity of music that's around now. When I was a kid, we just didn't have much. It was cassettes, and I remember. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when the CD hit, so it was a big deal then. And now to know, just the different avenues with music, and you like this, you can get that, and even live music's evolved, and I love going to see performances. So I would say music is definitely my favorite thing.
Do you have a favorite musician of this time at all?
That's a tough one. I tend to like heavier things. Matt Morton right now is my favorite. By the way, we are doing a vinyl release with this soundtrack, so it should be really cool. Matt's doing an entire remastered vinyl edition that'll be out towards the anniversary, which is I think it's going to be out the day before, so July 19th. 2019. So keep a lookout for that.
Oh, for sure. But that is about all I have. Is there any, I guess, last things you want to let people know about your movie or your film?
No, catch it on the biggest screen that you can. It's not only going to be on some IMAX screens. They're talking about bringing it back throughout the year, which would be really great. But see it in a theater. And then we're doing a science center and museum version that's going to be available in May. So for everybody that likes to go, watch, go down to your local museum or your science center, some of the NASA facilities will have an IMAX giant screen version of the film as well. And then CNN will be broadcasting it around the anniversary starting in June.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about Apollo 11 and coming on here.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the kind words and spreading the message of the film.
Oh, yes. But yeah, I guess we'll get out of here and let you go on with your day. Once again, Kate always closes this out. So can you tell everybody, I guess since you obviously are not social media, but if anybody would like to find you, tell them where they can.
Yeah, so Apollo11movie.com is the place to go for all the film-related info.
Awesome. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Kate, are you still there? Yeah. Kate.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank
right,
you again.
I'm still here. Yeah,
yes,
thanks again, guys.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Had a lot of fun. Yeah, that's all I have. Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. And I'll get with Allison to get any sort of links or anything that that you all want to plug. We can do that.
Sounds great.
Well,
all right. Well, thanks again for having me, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks again. You too.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Too.